Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's episode. Today's topic is going to be on a Malthusian perspective of the coronavirus from Thomas Malthus himself, the economist, who also published a theory on population and who also was the inspiration for the character of Thanos when he was adapted to the movies for Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. But before we talk about that, I need to preface this. I do have a cracked tooth. It's actually broken, so I'm going to have a bit of a lisp. If during the editing process I see that I'm an unintelligible babbling dweeb, I'm going to put up subtitles for you, so don't worry about that. But let's turn to our topic for today. Malthus was a man who believed that it was disease, famine, war, and other such disasters that kept the balance of life and death. For you see, in his mind, there was a certain capacity that each society could sustain of life before death came back with vengeance. The quality of life for those that were alive would drop exponentially as crowding became all the more common. This, yes, works in the wild and in a zero-sum game, and when we take a look at the coronavirus in the Malthusian framework, there are some interesting things we can know. The coronavirus preys upon those that are typically a net drain to society and their resources. With their termination to life, it does create, we would think, more resources. But more resources it does leave more resources, but those are yet to be processed, so to speak. My contention to his thoughts, that there are less competitors, is that because of certain things like disease or famine, it means that society's means of production drop, meaning that it cannot produce as many resources. Therefore, even if there are less competitors for those resources, overall, people will get less resources. This is especially so in capitalistic economies. This is especially so in today's global world. We see the globalist world is in fact operated primarily by a market that is dictated by the interests of its capitalist leaders. I want to go ahead and bring to your attention the Black Death for a second, dear viewer. The value of understanding the Black Death is that for 150 years it went ahead and ravaged the known world. Asia, China, specifically, Europe, and Northern Africa. Why am I bringing this up? Well, Thomas Malthus did believe that, yes, the quality of life for those that did survive would improve after the disease spread, once they survived officially. There's a problem though. The quality of life for those that would survive dropped drastically during the crisis, and for themselves later down the line, and for their offspring, they forfeit a great deal of benefits in the future. Let's talk again about the Black Death. For 150 years, it ravaged not only Asia, Europe, and Africa. Before then, Northern Africa was a center for learning, for scholarship. It was a cradle for modern mathematics, new approaches and innovations to science, such as with surgeries, such as with the numerical system being developed that we actually use nowadays. As opposed to Roman numerals, we can now switch to 1, 2, 3. The prototype of that was developed in Northern Africa. Europe, meantime, was going under quite a few crusades, with which it connected the entire world together at that point. Throughout Africa, and throughout even a good chunk of Asia, it was able to establish trade routes, to learn from the people as it passed through, and to overall harmonize the world a little bit. By hook, by crook. By blade, yes, to a certain extent. However, the net term, long-term gains were certainly something to be noted and even outweighed the occasional atrocities, but topic for another day. I want to focus now on why are we talking about the Black Death? Because not only did it make 1/8 of Africa's population succumb, 1/3 of Europe's perish, and it eradicated half of Asia's population. Why am I talking about two very disparate diseases? One that was extremely lethal, and one that was extremely tame. Because such actions, such as quarantining, locking everything down, was very justified in this extremely lethal, before this lethal disease. But what if we're talking about one that is perhaps not as lethal, but did experience, in fact, an even greater, disproportionate lockdown? One that would cause the starvation of millions, possibly to rival even the amount of deaths that the disease would rack up, and would possibly impact younger people, those that have only to gain by survival. Not survival from the disease, but survival if they can feed themselves in developing nations. I'm going to go ahead and present to you an article down below about the UN warning of the mass starvation that will be caused because of this disease. There is also the concern for the markets. For those that are considering offering themselves, because there is a greater degree of stress, of need, of desperation in this world, as at the moment. It was upon opening back up that the quality of life for those that who have to rebuild the world after the Black Death. It was only after the release that they were able to experience a higher quality of life. And locking ourselves down, especially for something so minor in threat and scope, well, puts all of us at grave risk. Puts all of us at extreme disadvantage. Not only are we sacrificing today the lives and the comfort of those who have only to gain from a bit more of a normal future, an immediate normal course of action. Not only are we harming everyone. However, for the future, ladies and gentlemen, are we sacrificing the innovations, the developments that we would stand to gain if we were to go ahead and continue this path? There are some that say do not go ahead and open back up until a vaccine or even a cure is developed. This is not a viable strategy. And in time, we will suffer, not only just at this moment, but in the extreme long term. We will face devastation. This coronavirus, is not merely a disease that attacks the lungs, that slays the elderly and the compromised. It's on the mind foremost. And going back to Thomas Malthus's thoughts and opinions, I think he'd be very pleased that the coronavirus would kill off those are net drains on society. However, we must consider, and this is my opinion now, that we're going to have some losses when we lose these people. There's a certain quality of insight and experience that they have, especially the elderly. A sort of wisdom that is slowly passing away, and they do well to preserve. A society that is strong, one that is able to develop its infrastructure, to put their children in better positions, to innovate, to reach yonder for the stars. One that is able to do that needs all sorts of opinions, needs to be a forum, an open platform, if you would, where each man is able to take his own life and responsibility into his own hands, to be master of his own fate. To empower himself is to empower those all around him. But, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for surviving to the bonus round. That's right. Mask off, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to get into some spicy statistics. It is thought that the mortality rate is around 1.3% for the coronavirus. This is not counting testing. This is only those that are suspected of having it. We take into account that there is emergent data that as much as half of everyone who has the coronavirus are asymptomatic, we can come to the conclusion that the mortality rate is in truth a minute, and at most a minute 0.65%. And for a final thought, I think C.S. Lewis put it best. And I quote, "The new oligarchy must increasingly rely on the advice of scientists, till in the end, politicians become merely the scientists' puppets, taken from willing slaves of the welfare state." C.S. Lewis was, in fact, a man wiser beyond his years. A man, I think, who was born a little too early. He would have made a great contemporary, such great insight, and one would have some choice things to say about Dr. Fauci. But ladies and gentlemen, that's enough about me and my rants about the coronavirus. Sweden is based. Peace be upon you all, and until the next time, thank you.